Interest rates have been cut for a second consecutive month in New Zealand, currently standing at 3%. But how low will interest rates go? And how has the currency reacted? I'm joined by Paul Dales from Capital Economics. So Paul, Reserve Bank Governor Graham Wheeler stated in a statement, at this point some further easing seems likely, with some analysts predicting New Zealand to match Australia's 2% benchmark interest rate. Do you think this is likely, and over what time frame do you see this happening?
I think it's perfectly possible, yes. Our forecast is actually that the Reserve Bank of New Zealand will eventually cut rates to 2%. I think that could probably happen either later this year or perhaps most likely early next year. And the main reason is simply because New Zealand is being hit by the fall in export prices triggered by the lower dairy price, and at the same time its construction boom is coming to an end. So I think lower interest rates is necessary in order to prevent inflation, which is already at very low levels, from falling to worryingly low levels.
Since the statement, the New Zealand to US dollar exchange rate is 1.41 points higher at 0.6677. Since the announcement, was this expected?
Well, the reason why the New Zealand dollar strengthened was because the Reserve Bank changed its wording about the New Zealand dollar. So previously it's talked about the dollar being overvalued, and it didn't repeat that, although it did suggest that further depreciation is likely. I wouldn't put too much emphasis on this move at all. I think the bigger picture is that if we're right in expecting that interest rates will fall to around 2%, then that's a lower level of interest rates than the markets are currently expecting. So the New Zealand dollar should then weaken again against the US dollar, and perhaps it could weaken all the way to 55 cents compared to about 67 cents now.
You mentioned your outlook for the currency pair falling around 0.55. Reserve Bank of New Zealand confirms 0.65 is the Goldilocks level for the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. The pair currently stands at 0.66. So in what time frame are you expecting to see the currency reach Goldilocks levels and the levels of 0.55?
I won't be surprised if by the end of this year or early next year the New Zealand dollar had fallen below 60 cents and perhaps even closer to 55 cents.
And finally, dairy exports make up around 1/3 of the country's exports. So how could the currency changes affect New Zealand's exports?
Well, what the lower dollar does is it cushions some of the blow. So dairy is priced in US dollars. So if the New Zealand dollar weakens against the US dollar, then even any given further fall in the dairy price is actually smaller in New Zealand dollar terms, which is what matters for farmers in New Zealand. But the problem is that the lower dollar is not going to fully offset the hit to the national income of New Zealand from lower dairy prices. So that's why we think that the economic outlook is perhaps a bit weaker than most people, because we think the hit to national income from lower dairy prices will have a bigger impact on overall domestic demand.
Well, Paul, thank you for speaking with us today. That's all that we have time for, but for all the latest updates, keep clicking back. Goodbye for now.